I'm just figuring out if you have a quorum. Give me 1 second. I believe you do. Well, actually, I think you'd need 4 voting members for a quorum. And unfortunately, Mr. Katarsky is non-voting, so I don't think would count toward your quorum, but I could check your bylaws.
I am adding Lori now as a panel.
Oh, great. Okay, then you will be able to start the meeting.
All right, let's start. We've got 2 projects to review today, so we're going to be here for a while. Hello, Lori. So I will call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Wednesday, July 10, 2024 Design Review Board meeting. Public comment is by Zoom or by phone by calling 877-852-5247 or 888-788-0099 and entering meeting ID 974-6174-9412. This information is also available on the published agenda in the public record in the public notices section of the city website and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN channel 16, AT&T channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org/watchctn. The Volunteer Resident Design Review Board, appointed by the mayor and confirmed by City Council, fosters excellence in Ann Arbor's built environment design and advises applicants on meeting downtown design guidelines. First, the applicant presents their proposed project for 15 minutes. Then the board discusses the design. After that, members of the public can comment for up to 3 minutes each. So, Hank, if you could call the roll, please.
Certainly. Chair Perkins.
Here.
Vice Chair Singleton.
Here.
Noting that Board Member Burns advised she would be absent in advance. William Kinley.
Here.
Board Member Mitchell.
Here.
Board Member Ramson.
Here.
And Board Member Katarsky.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, thank you for that. So between my script and following the actual agenda, I've got so darn many windows open, it's not funny. Okay, so we are on to approval of the agenda. If I could have a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Wendy and supported by Bill. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Is approved. And then on to approval of the minutes. These are the minutes from the June 12, 2024 Design Review Board meeting. They're also in your packet. So if I could have a motion and a second.
Motion to approve.
Or second, whatever you need.
Motion by Lori and seconded by Dick. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved. We are on to public comment. Brittany, it looks like that's in your court right now. Do we have anybody who wants to speak?
Yes, we do. Give me a second. And I will allow Jeff and Christine Crockett to talk.
Could you put up a timer for us, Brittany, please, for 3 minutes?
Yep, doing it right now.
Thank you.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
I am Jeff Crockett. Chris is right next to me, actually. I have lived in Ann Arbor since 1973 and in the Old Fourth Ward since 1980. Both my wife and I have. I'm currently serving as the chair of the Bicentennial History Subcommittee, which is currently supporting 14 bicentennial projects by 23 volunteers who have spent many hundreds of hours on these projects. It was our committee in collaboration with Destination Ann Arbor, the State Street District, the Kemp House, and the Library Green Conservancy that planned and managed the Ann Arbor's Bicentennial Party and Picnic on May 25th at Liberty Plaza. So you can imagine how we felt when we learned that Brown Court, an historic example of workforce housing, is being slated for demolition during our bicentennial year and replaced with luxury housing. But expressing this disappointment is only one of the reasons why we are speaking. We understand that this project is being underwritten by Wickfield Properties, whose business has made a lot of money over the years in Ann Arbor. If Wickfield is going to demolish these historic properties, then as a gift to Ann Arbor and its bicentennial year, they should be building workforce housing on this site to fill a critical need. Wouldn't it be nice if the employees of the People's Food Co-op could afford to live down the street from their place of employment? They can't afford to live downtown now, and the People's Food Co-op is in danger due to all the construction that's going to be going on in the area. But another problem I have for this site is its design. And I say this not knowing if the design that was submitted is the final design or if this is just an initial concept. But the drawings we've seen are monochrome and would in no way be compatible with the nearby buildings. The drawings should be in color, not only for the proposed building, but the nearby buildings. These should also include the type of materials being used. And without this information, it's difficult for me or others in the public to evaluate the project design. Finally, there is no assurance that the occupants will be full-time residents for a development like this. It would not surprise us that the owners of these units would be wealthy outside investors who would use these units as short-term rentals during football Saturdays. Therefore, it would be interesting to know, once this project is completed, how many residents will be full-time. Thank you for your consideration. I await more detail, or Chris and I await more detailed designs in color that would be helpful in determining whether the building's final design is compatible with nearby buildings. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
We have no other hands raised at this time.
All right, Brittany, thank you. Moving on to regular business then. First item that we are looking at today is DR 24-0002, 1209 South University Avenue. Is Alexis joining us?
So Alexis and our other more senior planners have been working with our new associate planners to bring them into new aspects of project review and development review. So for this particular project, she has handed the reins for this meeting to our new planner, one of two, who you'll meet in today's meeting, Julia Shake. And I will give some time for staff to promote the presenters for this item. But while those folks are being promoted, I'm not sure everyone had joined when you introduced yourself earlier, Julia, so you're welcome to share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, great to meet everybody. Mariana and she'll introduce herself in a little bit later on. I think next Monday is officially month 3 of our tenure with the City of Ann Arbor in the planning department. Previously, I lived in Ann Arbor for a while through my PhD, did my PhD in planning at the University of Michigan, and then was living and working in Brazil for the past 8 years, working as a university professor in planning, doing sustainability consulting for like regional development and different things like that. But it's good to be back in Ann Arbor.
And a pleasure to have you in our department. And I think that your presenters have joined.
I'm going to miss
I think that is everyone.
if the council just makes us disappear like we've talked about in the past. I'm going to miss working with these new faces. So at any rate, welcome.
Thank you. So for the first project for today that we presented, DR 22-0002 1209 South University Avenue. I think we have 3 members of the design and development team that will be here to present. Allison, Brad, and Mainga. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. And I will hand over the reins to them for the presentation at this point.
Thank you. Mina, would you be able to share the presentation? I'll just do a quick introduction of our team, and then I will turn it over to our architecture team to walk through the design. You can go to the next slide, Mina. But I am Allison Mills. I'm the vice president at CRG, the developer of the project. We are a national real estate development firm headquartered in Chicago, but doing work all over the country. And we have a couple of partners on this project who I'll quickly introduce. Locally, we are partnering with Hughes Properties, who her team has partnered with before in Ann Arbor. They've just built Vic Village South and have operated Vic Village North for many years. Also on the call with me is my colleague Mina Lamb from the Lamar Johnson Collaborative, or LJC. They're actually in-house to us here at CRG, as we have development, architecture, and construction vertically integrated here. And then also on the call is Brad Moore, who you all know, who is supporting our architecture team in the design process. Next slide. And lastly, we've also joint ventured with Shapack Partners, who is a close longtime partner of ours, also based in Chicago, who we worked with on several projects together over the years, building unique residential and retail experiences together. Next slide. And I also wanted to note that while it is early on for us in the process, we do have a strong art mandate and an art mission here at CRG. These are 2 of the recent murals and a public sculpture piece that we actually have built over the last year with local markets in with local artists in each of these markets. Next slide. And we do take this community engagement and feedback process really seriously. This is a public exhibition we actually just built in Madison just last month. That was the result of input over the course of a year from the neighborhood, which was a really rewarding process for us to be a part of. So really just appreciate you taking the time to discuss the project with us, and look forward to working with the DRB and the neighborhood on ways we can continue to enhance the public realm like this. So with that, I will turn it over to Mina to walk you through the building.
Thank you, Allison. I have a series of slides, so I'll kind of quickly go through these. Obviously, the site is an L-shaped site located on the corner of South University and Church Street, located within the South University zoning district overlay. The project will be developed into a 19-story residential building consisting of approximately 148 units. The ground floor, universities on the south. There is retail on the corner of Church and University. We are showing a smaller retail along University as well. The lobby spaces are a little bit more inboard, access off of an outdoor, covered outdoor space. And then there's, we have bikes and trash in towards the back of the building. It was important for this project that we really, maximize the retail on the street and provide that continuity of retail experience. So the covered area is something that feels like we're carving out of the building, and it serves 2 purposes. The first is it creates a more safe and extended area for the lobby, for the residential lobby, that makes it feel more gracious. It gives more articulation to the street elevation, which I will show in some renderings later. And the secondary thing it serves is it allows for trucks to access and maintain the waste removal per Ann Arbor's requirements. This is level 2. The building does go to the property line. The units start at level 2. However, in the corner, we are showing residential amenities. This space will allow us to activate the space above the retail podium. And then you can see in the back, we've got some mechanical areas as well as an open space that meets the requirements for the trash removal arm. This is the typical residential floor. It is an L-shaped configuration. At this level, the building is set back 5 feet along South University as well as Church Street in compliant with the zoning requirements. And then this is the level 19, the very top floor, which houses full floor of residential amenities, and has a rooftop terrace on the corner that will be landscaped and to be used, as an active space. Towards the north, we'll have mechanical spaces, and then above this, the roof area, there will be PV arrays that will allow us to meet the sustainability requirements for the site. This is some sections through the building. We are 19 floors, and absolute height is 195 feet. On the left-hand side, we are showing the clearances required within the portal, the covered portal, as well as the clearances required for the trash removal vehicles. This is a perspective view looking on the corner of South University and Church Street. So the building is as of right, which means that it's going to be, it's in context with the neighboring buildings. There is a distinct base, middle, and top. The base is a 2-story expression, primarily retail on the ground floor, that is complementary to and has a pedestrian scale similar to the neighboring retail buildings around it. The typical residential floor has a 2-story window bays expression. The windows are relatively small to give it a residential a character and scale. And the 2-story allows us to create a vertical expression. Along the facade on University Street, we have breaks. There are 2 breaks. They are roughly 9 feet, and they are recessed 12 inches from the main facade to allow us to break the facade into 3 components to further emphasize the verticality. And then at the top of the building, there is the amenity space, which is which is designed to be a glass and metal enclosure that really contrasts the building below with a high level of transparency and activity. This, would help us to create a unique identity in the skyline with the neighboring buildings. It was intentional that the massing, the design of the massing and the design of facades be kept simple. The kind of how we would want to describe this is simple, calm, restrained, and symmetrical. While the design is fairly simple, we've put a lot of attention into the detail of the building, which we will show in some renderings. But unlike the neighboring buildings, we didn't want to force a lot of variation in the facade expression, especially on University, where we're it's not a relatively, it's not a big building. It's 150 feet in length on University and approximately 50 feet on Church. So the goal was to keep it more refined and simple, and I would even say quiet. So then, with a little bit more detail, so this is the two-story base at the street level. The facade is brick with metal accents, and then at the bottom of the piers we have granite. We wanted to, use quality materials, but also create a lot of detail that would bring character to this part of the street. We've integrated metal within the storefronts, above the storefronts, and then on the second floor there is more like a warehouse style window with some details there. Metal accents for the canopies and the awnings to really activate the retail spaces. And then further along, the entry portal is in this area. And so here is a closer view of that entry portal, where the residential lobby is accessed off of that. We wanted to really activate this space and create a kind of a semi private public area as a entry for the residential. And we did this by carrying the glass of the retail storefronts around. We've also introduced a sliding gate at the back of that space, so that it does provide a backdrop and for security as well. We've introduced the portal itself is curbless. It's seamless for throughout, and we've placed some bollards on the near the entry to prevent public vehicles from using it. The bollards can be removed when service maintenance vehicles need to access the back area. This is moving up the building. This is a typical residential bay, the two-story bay at the typical residential floors. We wanted to show that the level of detail of the brickwork, as well as the metal detail on the corner, that is being expressed. There is also, we wanted to study the depth. The windows are pushed back, 6 inches, so that there is a shadow line and that it's not so flat. And then this is a view from the Church Street side, where we're showing the building elevations as they turn the corner. The intent is to keep the larger glass openings on the corners and maintain that same language from University all the way to the back. Again, for the tower, the facade for the residential floors are brick, and brick on University as well as on Church. And then back here, there's a faint line from back here where we're coming back a bay or two. The back elevations will be cementitious panel.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, Mina. You all are coming up quickly on time, so I just wanted to do a quick check-in to let you know that.
I will, there's a few more things I want to say, and I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to go back to this. It was, we wanted to, for the facade, it was intentional to differentiate and complement the neighboring buildings around it. And when we say differentiate, we're doing this through a darker and deeper material palette. We do this with the warehouse window detail on the ground, on the level 2, as well as the rooftop amenity space. We've introduced metal, steel expression, and then a unique corner expression. And we feel like this would differentiate, but also complement the neighboring buildings around it, as well as be a complementary expression to the city of Ann Arbor. We submitted elevations. I don't think I want to go through this. And so that kind of wraps up my presentation. I look forward to your questions that the DRB has for us.
Okay, thank you for the presentation.
So at this point, Mr. Chair, if we could just see if Planner Shake has anything to add from a staff perspective, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, thank you to the development team for your presentation. I won't spend a lot of time going through the staff report. Staff has identified a number of especially pertinent design guidelines for the downtown Ann Arbor from the downtown Ann Arbor design guidelines, especially within design guidelines for context and site planning, urban pattern and form, open space, parking, driveways and service areas, building massing, street edge, entries, windows, awnings, materials, building operational systems, and sustainability in building elements. Specifically, I want to call attention to the fact that this is within the South University Character District as well. And more than happy to answer any specific questions about the specific guidelines that we identified as especially pertinent. But just to call attention to a few important findings from the staff report, the urban pattern and form in the South University character area has significantly changed the past decade. The proposed project is consistent with this emergent character. Open space of source for the development is provided by a pedestrian alley or the walkway that was shown along the north side of the Church Street and a service drive through the middle of the ground floor from South University. Specific design treatment for the north pedestrian alley is unclear, but the renderings provided appear to indicate the opening on South University maximizes multifunction activity and does not detract from the sidewalk experience. Point 3, notwithstanding the well-designed open space of the South University Service Drive, Guideline A.4.1 recommends locating driveways and service areas to minimize impact on pedestrians. The service drive may better meet the guidelines if it was relocated to Church Street. Item 4, the proposed appears to conform to the dimensional standards of the South University Character Overlay District and the applicable guidelines in Section B, Design Guidelines for Buildings. The design has a particularly strong base, and the tower has a distinct change in the ratio of solid to void. And finally, point 5, the design also appears to respond particularly well to the applicable guidelines in Section C, Design Guidelines for Building Elements. Its street edge is rich, entries are appropriate, windows have a high level of transparency and establish both horizontal and vertical patterns. Awnings are proposed and are proportional to the overall proportions of the facade. And building materials reinforce the massing and architectural concepts and character of the building and its context. That concludes the staff report for this project, but staff is available should there be any other questions regarding the design guidelines that we identified. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Okay. I think at this point we can invite board member comments. So just raise your hand if you want to jump in. Wendy.
I guess I want to start with some questions. So if we could go to sheet 7, which is the ground floor plan. I'm trying to understand where the property lines are, and from the elevations, it looks like there's a gap on the east side. I don't know if that's a right-of-way. And I don't know what's going on in the very back there in the far north. So maybe the applicant can talk a little bit about what's going on.
To the east is a vacant lot, Wendy, that is owned by the neighbor to the east, U Towers.
Is it a right-of-way, a utility right-of-way, or
It's their property.
No, it's just a vacant lot. It's just a vacant lot.
We actually looked at that site in 2016, and that was going to be one of my questions. So while you brought it up, Wendy, I'm curious because that was supposed to be developed as a 4-story, 12,000 square foot building, and I don't think anything's happened with it. Does staff know where that project stands?
I checked with Mr. Kowalski earlier this week. He was the planner assigned to that. He said it was withdrawn and never moved forward.
Okay, thank you. All right. Didn't mean to interrupt, Wendy, but you hit on questions.
Probably, yeah, it leaves a little bit to be desired to keep to that open there. I don't know whether it's something that can provide access at some point to the rear. Because it seems like it's going to be a trick to get vehicles in and out of that, whatever we call it, alley in the center of the site. But what's along the back there? I see that there's a...
Wendy, I'd like to answer your question. The property line is the dashed line that you see. There is a 6'9" easement, walkway to this north. And then back here, there's an easement to access the DTE switch. This is something that is that was part of the site access, and so we could not go over that area.
So it's a easement for the parking structure or for the apartment?
For the parking structure
to access utility. It's a utility easement in the back, in the rear of the property. The property line is the solid-ish black line that you can kind of see around. So 1215, which is owned by the same, like Brad mentioned, owned by the same owners as University Towers. We have been trying to connect with them about their property, but it's currently under their control right now, just preserving views from University Towers. But the current curb cut on South University is where we're showing this access, just for trash, no other vehicles.
And Midwestern Consulting has been working with the city on the maneuvering paths for the trash pickup trucks, and everything can be done in a T-turn that the city and the private hauler trucks are capable of.
Can you point out where that screen would be that you had mentioned?
The screen would be back here. It slides. There's actually two screens. One would slide this way, and another secondary one would slide this way. And the idea was that when you're accessing the bikes, that you can kind of maneuver around it. But the idea was that as you're looking through the space, that we're not looking back into the neighbors' yards, and that we're maintaining, that frontage on University where the public can look through and control that.
Okay, thank you. That's all very helpful.
All right, Dick, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have, while we're on the site plan, a question. Something that comes up with us frequently is where do the Grubhub cars and the Amazon deliveries park and come and go?
There's an existing, you can see it on Church Street there where the curb dives in, and there's room for 3 or 4 vehicles right there. That is that designated space for this property.
So that's a no parking zone. It's just for deliveries.
It's loading 15 minutes.
That's correct. It's already signed that way. It's a loading, and you can pull in, park your commercial vehicle there and then it's delivered to the lobby.
Okay. Thank you. And I had a question for Julia, and it's a little bit out of our purview, so I apologize for that. This is a project that was given a premium for sustainability. We haven't talked about that yet. But what do we do in the case of sustainability goals not being reached, but the building is built and occupied? And it worries me that there was significant premium awarded for more floors and more beds. But the sustainability discussion, at least in our package, was not very thorough. So is there a commitment to reaching a certain sustainability goal? Or is it a desire?
If I could step in, because the DRB is your board is the first stop, this project has not even submitted a full package for site plan review. And so that full menu of what the applicant may wish to provide, it could evolve yet. I'll let them speak, but from the staff perspective, we don't have a full set of materials to determine whether or not they meet the UDC criteria for a bonus, for a height bonus, on the basis of sustainability, et cetera. We just don't have access to that yet, but we could, make a note that the applicant would like to work toward that, and then we keep that in mind once a submittal is made.
Yeah,
But I'll let the applicant speak to.
I know, Hank, it's beyond our purview,
And
but
Dick,
there should be a means of monitoring sustainability goals and making sure they're met. And I don't know how we deal with it if 5 floors have been awarded for an unfulfilled promise. So
Dick,
it's
I can tell you that on other projects, the penalties for failure have been included in the development agreements. I don't know if that's the path.
they're really minor though. So moving on into things that are in our purview, I think you really did a good job of capturing the spirit of the guidelines. It's a building designed in 2024 and reflects that, and we all believe should, and at the same time captures the scale and at least the scale, and maybe not the massing as much, but the level of interest of what we're after. The steel detailing that appears on the primary facades is really well done. I think Mina called it simple, and it's simple and it's subtle, but it's interesting, and you did a nice job of it. And I think it maintains the scale that we're looking for on the pedestrian level. So I want to commend you for that, and your awareness of shadow lines and depth above, while at the same time keeping it simple is a real attribute. So I think you've understood the spirit of the guidelines and done a good job of it.
Thank you. Thanks for that feedback.
And Dick, to just respond to your question about sustainability, while it is early, as Hank mentioned, we have dedicated roof space for the PVs, so we can make sure that we're capturing the required amount of solar panels on the roof, and are also in conversations with DTE about future electrification of the entire building.
It's just hard, in experience tells me that HVAC controls are going to be probably individual throughout the building. And that's where most lead points are gained, through the HVAC system and the thermal package. So it's a real challenge, and it's hard, as you know, to get all the points you would like to get. And it just may be too late for the city if it falls short. Then that's my concern. But we'll let the City Council and Planning Commission deal with that.
All right, Lori.
Hi, thank you. I concur that I think that you've done a really nice job executing the intent and building out the details and the materials in a way that's both very restrained but also very rich. At eye level, seems a pleasure to walk along the street. So I have very kind of precise little comments, mostly about the alley that passes through the building, and the bollards that you've shown. So maybe if you could just switch to that view. Probably already on your minds, but I think something protecting those facades would be beneficial, even if it's just sort of like a thickened steel midway mullion or some sort of rub bar incorporated into the facade that actually protects that in some way. I just would never trust any of the vehicles moving in and out of here to do that so thoughtfully as to avoid incident in there. I'd also say removable bollards tend to come out but not go back in all the time. They get thrown in the back of a truck or on the side of the alley or borrowed permanently. So if they are removable, one thing I would recommend is actually creating empty receptacles nearby that they can slide into when moved out of the way and then back into this position. So they always have a home in the landscape if removable is the only option. Otherwise, possibly looking at a fold down variety that stays in place and is much more operable and friendly. Sometimes these get too heavy, sometimes they roll around, they get very banged up, but I would rethink the removable solution for those just to make sure that that works effectively, because from my experience, they tend not to last very long as a solution. So that's really it. Otherwise, I think it's it's really nicely done.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Lori. Dick?
Just a quick comment to add to Lori. We've had pretty good luck with hydraulic bollards that stay in place and are automated and can pop up and down, and that's maybe what you're thinking of. The other thing related to this alley is that any vehicle going in, I believe, with that screen there, needs to back out across Southview. So Julia's point about it coming off Church is a valid one, but you only have 6'9" back there.
No,
So
all the vehicles will head, but won't have to back out because of the teacher. They'll be able to head face out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it backs out here and then.
But when the screen is up,
The screen would be removed, would slide because it slides horizontally and the screens would slide when the vehicles need to access that space.
Okay. Thank you, Mina.
Lori, you have more to add? No? Wendy?
We should probably let John go first, but the one thing that I noticed is that at the corner you have the that brick column, and the radius on the street is really tight in that intersection. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to do, to shave that off, or if that's a supporting column, but people tend to collect there. And, if nothing else, transparency might be good because of all the activity that goes on there.
We can study that. I think the piers coming down are important, but I understand your point. Well, we can study that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, John, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to applaud Allison's statement about an art mandate from the design team, that the council feels likewise, and as such, actually changed the board to include a member of the art commission, of which I'm that such member. And so I'd like, first of all, to kind of zero in on two of the items that the staff has identified, and that's the open spaces and the street edge, that both could be improved with elements of public art. And I know this is just very early, but I'm wondering what your plans might be for public art, and where and how you might plan to do that.
So it is still very early in the process, but we have done in the past both public murals and public sculptures. So I think would be open to exploring with the design team and working with a local artist in one of those two mediums, whether it's in our alleyway, in our kind of muse area, public muse area. There may be a good opportunity there, or something more in the public right of way. Maybe there's like another sculptural element that we can include, but we would definitely look forward to suggestions for other folks in the art community that we should continue to reach out and have those conversations with.
Great. So when that time comes, the Art Commission stands ready to help in any way possible. We have networks into that community and some experience on what works and what could work better. I have two other questions. I want to agree with Dick regarding how you handled the massing and the shadow lines, the vertical recess. I think is awesome. I really like it. I think it fits in. It looks good. I want to ask about two things, and I'm not sure whether it's sustainability or building operation, but the city is trying to get away from natural gas as much as possible. My question, and it kind of ties in with solar. My question is, are you planning to offer natural gas to residents of the building? And how are you planning to use solar?
So right now we have provisions for solar panels on the roof to contribute to the electrification of the building. We are still in conversations with DTE about the capacity that they have in this neighborhood, which I'm sure you've heard from other projects is not necessarily ready for 100% electrification, but our plan is to continue to work with them to try to achieve those goals as close as we can, or at least design the building to a point where it can be all electric at some point in the future.
Allison, you're not planning on gas stoves or appliances in the apartments, right?
No appliances. There shouldn't. The only real capacity issue is for heating and ventilation in the MEPs, but the ranges and the units are all electric. Day one.
I like that. That's great. I'm sure the council will like it as well. You might want to note that this election cycle, there's an issue on the ballot regarding Ann Arbor's own kind of utility and how it interfaces, which might very well change the DTE maximum of what you could put on the building. So just a bookmark for that. That's all I have. I like the building. Looks very good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Bill?
Hi, thank you. I'll agree with all the comments that preceded this. It's a nicely designed building. The only thing I want to discuss just briefly and see your logic, because I'm sure you have studied this to death, why you couldn't bring in the alley through the side of the building, the Church Street side, not in 6-9 is too small, but through the footprint of the building, because you pierced it through the front. And most utility use of dumpsters and so forth are at the back corner with a reordering of the fire command center, fire water pump, and so forth. Recapturing some of that common area space coming in, the loading and trash zone wouldn't have to be as big. Tell me your logic of why you couldn't bring it in off Church. I'm concerned that since Southview has much more density of pedestrian traffic and vehicular traffic than Church Street, having utility vehicles, service vehicles, and so forth coming in and off that side is problematic. Maybe it's the only way you can do it this way, but give me some of the logic of why you couldn't move it from that Church Street cutout through the fire command center, the footprint, not the 6-9 space.
I'll also add, and I don't know, Mina, if you want to add anything else, but what doesn't show on this floor plan, William, is the existing 4-story apartment building that's just to the north. Their only access to the street, their only curb cut is via an easement through the existing curb cut onto South University. So we cannot relocate their access. Goes right there.
That's a pretty good answer.
So we're maintaining the curb cut as it exists and expanding it for trash and service as we need to, but I'm trying to get all parties access in the same location.
Thanks for the explanation.
Lori?
Yeah, I want to just channel my inner Tamara and say that, ask the question if there are windows in the stair corridor. It looks as though that's a solid massing on the facade of the building, and getting daylight into those stairs, especially with a building of this height, is important for comfort and usability of that space. So am I reading that correctly, that there are?
So for this location, I think this is, we will want to provide a window looking into the space, but I think your question is on a typical floor, if I'm not mistaken. Correct. And so this stair is on the perimeter. Could we start to look at windows in that stair? I think it would be fire rated glass, but that's something that we would take into consideration.
Would certainly encourage the use of that, especially floor to floor for students versus using elevators for everything, to make that feel like a more comfortable and humane space. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lori. I had a few questions. Your narrative talks about a vibrant internal portal, the two retail spaces being bisected by. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So this is the area I think you're meaning. This is that outdoor covered entry area, and we've continued the retail around to help further activate that space. I think it's meant to not feel like a service drive. I don't know if that answers your question. I think the goal was to turn a service drive into something that looks intentional, and we did this with some of the details where this is curbless. I didn't mention this in my presentation, but the image on the right is a project where the team has worked on in Chicago at JPEG. This is a Muse, obviously a different scale, but similar in character, where it's activated with, obviously here there was more height, activated with greenery, activated with uses, as well as have a seamless right-of-way kind of look that would extend into that space. Does that answer your question?
And I would just add, Mina, too, like it's not intended to be as every day. We don't have parking on this project, and so we actually expect vehicular use is going to be quite limited. It's not going to be like an everyday vehicle servicing this. It's really going to be a pedestrian experience for 90% of the time.
Right. Thank you for that. My concern is what you're showing on the right-hand side, your Chicago project, that to me is vibrant. What I'm looking at here on the South University entrance, that to me is not vibrant. When I see spaces like this, and we looked at this on a project a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was back in May, I'm not sure, but those spaces always look to me like a perfect place for a mugging to occur. And a vibrant space would invite people into it. Your bike parking is back there, so there is going to be, so I'm not sure, do the gates interfere with access to the bike parking? I just don't feel like what you're projecting there at this preliminary stage is a very vibrant use of that potentially nice pedestrian plaza, where there might be some seating out there or something like that.
We really looked at designing the space, and I'm going to share with you our wish list. Lighting that can extend down from the ceiling, seating permanently located within the space, landscaping components. The problem we have is that all of that impacts the clearances of the trucks coming through, and so they can never be permanent. We did mention this, so it's very little depth in that ceiling. I think we'll get some lighting that would we would do the best we can with the space, but given that trucks need to move through, there's nothing that is it cannot be accessorized like the image on the right.
And I would just note, Mina, we're showing the rendering really for like preliminary design intent, but in the site plan, you could also see we had the leasing lobby office across from the regular lobby, the residential lobby. And so would expect that there's actually going to be quite a bit of natural, resident and pedestrian foot traffic between the two. And then with a combination of lighting, art, and planters, and that transparency that retail A and retail B have, I think we're trying to say that we can execute it like we have executed it in the past and make it like this vibrant retail residential lobby experience.
Good. I mean, I have confidence that you can come up with something very nice there. I just wanted to note that, it's something that I think can really enhance the streetscape. And I understand the issue of placing barriers in there to the vehicular traffic that you have to get in and out of there. Second question, if you can go back to one of those renderings of the church or the university, South University. Yeah, that one. So I really like the fenestration that you have conceptualized here. Especially the idea that you're going to put cut-ups in these windows. And so and they almost disappear in other elevations. Are these going to be mullions that are on the outside? I know they're not going to be true divided lights, but are they going to be simulated so that those mullions are on the outside of the glass too?
Yeah, it's very early. The idea was to have this expression. I don't know that we can determine the makeup of that system yet. I know this is the look that we're looking to achieve.
Well, I really like it, and I think it fits very nicely with the rest of your design direction. Another minor thing is I really like that soldier course of corbelled brick along the top of the second story. It could even be nicer if it was maybe an extra soldier course and 2 corbels out instead of just one, maybe a little bit more of the quasi-traditional look that you're or feeling that you're trying to achieve. But I like keeping it simple. I don't want to see dentals up there or something like that, but it could be a little bit more detailed than it is. I think that's it. I'm going to echo what other members have said. I think this is a nice building, and I think you responded well to the guidelines. And I'm also this is just quickly for staff. I've made this comment in the past that staff can't do our job, but I think the staff report this week picks up on a lot of those points, and it's helpful to have that review put in front of us. So thank you for that. Anybody else have anything to add?
I had one more, and it's not one more, it's just to reinforce what Wendy said, that outside corner at the intersection, if that could be made transparent, it's really helpful for people to see what's coming at a 90-degree pedestrian turn. And that's a real good thought. So I just want to reinforce that.
Bill, something else?
Yeah, just one minor thing, concentrating on the truck entry there. The doors for both the lobby and the leasing office swing into that space. I could see that being a dangerous situation. And maybe if you move those, recess those so they don't swing, so people don't step directly from the lobby into the traffic zone and the leasing office. If you recess those so they aren't swinging, so they aren't taking the first step out into the pathway of the vehicles. It's just a minor point. It probably will come up in the planning review, but I thought I would at least point out that it seems to me that could be a challenge long term.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the design team and to the staff and board members. If there is
Mr. Chair,
yes.
could we recap what we heard from you to make sure we have the right content for our summary document?
Good idea. Please.
Thanks. I will pass it over to Ms. Shake.
Thank you. And please stop me if I've miscaptured or I have not captured all of board members' comments or mischaracterized any board members' comments. But I'm going to attempt to summarize as follows. The board has noted that it captures the spirit of the guidelines overall, and there's been comment of the inclusion of art mandate was applauded. As far as specific comments, consider protecting the facades adjacent to the middle service drive. Design alternatives to removable bollards in which they remain on site, such as hydraulic or empty receptacles, could be beneficial. The brick column and radius at the street corner is very tight. Transparency might be a good because of the concentration of people at the corner. Consider having windows in the stair corridors. Emphasize creating a truly vibrant space in the middle corridor, and that the swinging doors into the middle corridor could create a dangerous situation. Potentially consider recessing those. Use of various systems to replicate facade elements as the building gets more distant from the ground level, as they get farther away out of the eyesight. And extra soldier course or corbels or other detail elements to enrich in the facade. Board members also discussed the interfaces with adjacent lots and buildings while understanding that they include easements and various limitations to those interactions. And outside of the purview of the board, the direct purview of the board, but board members brought attention to the importance of sustainability goals, including electrification and minimizing natural gas.
Did anyone hear anything?
Just real quickly, I had made mention of the cut-ups in the windows, whether those are a permanent design feature. Personally, I'd like to see them stay. Other board members may disagree with that.
Could we go to a slide to know what you're referring to, Mr. Perkins? I don't have a design background and I want to make sure we capture adequately what you're referring to.
Yeah. So if you take a look at the large sort of square opening right to the corner, that window has some narrow cut-ups in it. Yep. Whoever's doing the pointing, you're doing a perfect job. These cut-ups in the windows can either be between the two layers of glass, which makes them visible from the interior quite prominently, but from the exterior, they disappear because the glass is a single plane and it reflects the light. So if they go on the outside of the glass and the inside of the glass, then they are a prominent architectural element from both sides. And God knows I'm not an architect. Dick, you are. How do you feel about whether they stay or whether they go?
Oh, I totally agree with you. And I really like on the second floor, the Chicago style with the larger view window in the middle and two flanking smaller panels. That's fitting.
So Jeff, would the mullions in between the inner and outer pane of the thermal pane, would that be acceptable, or are you looking for something that projects past the glass on the outside?
No, when they're in between the two panes of glass, they pretty near disappear from the outside. So I would like to see them on the outside and the inside of the glass. I'm not looking for true divided light glass here. I know you can't afford that. But if it could be simulated divided light where it's inside and out, it would make those mullions read from the outside. Does that explain it to you, Hank?
It certainly does. Thank you so much. I think that concludes everything staff had for this presentation. Thank you to our presenters.
As long as just wanted to since it's my first time working with the design review board, just want to make sure, is there anything else that was either like miscaptured, not completely captured, or mischaracterized in my summary?
No, I think it was good, Julia.
Thank you so much.
All right, so thank you to the design team for that. We will move on to our next project.
Thank you.
All right, DR 24-3, 313 to 327 Brown Court. And I will turn this over to Mariana.
Jeff, let me just make a comment. I'm going to have to get off this. I have to go to another event that I can't get out of, but I will try to get on by my phone. If I can't carry on, I would like to see the Carytown thing, but I'm going to have to drop off pretty quickly here. So you may see me try to get back on with my phone pretty soon.
All right, hurry back.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Mariana. I'm one of the new planners. I started with Julia just a couple of months ago. And I believe I saw that we had our presenters on for 313 to 327 Braun Court. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Hi, everyone. This is Kenji with LOHA. We're the architect for the Braun Court project. We have also on the call Lorcan, the principal for the office, and Brian, the director. Pull up the drawings.
Would you like us to promote Brian as well?
Yes, please. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
All right. Lorcan, you're muted.
There we go. Sorry. And Lorcan O'Hurley. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
Great. Great pleasure to be here to work with you and, of course, the neighborhood in this process. Just as a brief overview on our office, we can go to the next slide. We're a practice that is both located in Los Angeles and Detroit. We've been busy for the last 10 years in Detroit. This represents a number of projects we've completed in Detroit. The two lower images are under construction. Each of these projects represent a larger development called Brush Park, which are the four images on the top, affordable housing in the bottom right, and a cultural project in the bottom left, which is in the East Village of Detroit, which is under construction. So that's a quick overview of the type of work. We're a 26-person firm based in, as I mentioned, in Detroit and Los Angeles. And our background is certainly committed to housing. And the importance of contextual architecture is also very important. Each of these projects that you're looking at here is variety of student housing, affordable housing, and market rate housing. So that's just a quick overview of our work. We can now go to the project summary.
So
today we're just going to discuss today we're just going to talk about a number of issues. One is, of course, our project, 7-story housing project. It does entail 38 units, 94,000 square foot floor area. And we do have 36 parking spaces, 24 bicycle spaces, and 2,572 square feet of ground level open space. In addition to that, 6,600 roughly square feet of balconies, terraces, and roof decks, which is a critical component of our project, as you see, as we start to show you images of the project. We're also providing, as I mentioned, that the ratio of parking is 1-to-1. The units are also, just a quick overview, are located near the heart of Carytown. I'm sure we're all aware of Brown Court and its the site. It is a bit of a transitionary block right now between the density of downtown and the lesser scaled single family neighborhoods. So this site it's interesting. It's a hinge site between those two conditions. To the south of the site is a new 6-level mixed-use building. It's planned and it's actually under construction. And to the north, there is an existing 4-level townhomes on the right-hand side. The brick paved streets outside lead to the Ann Arbor Farmers Market and other walkable community amenities. This next image is showing the context of our building. You can see here the relationship to the building 121 East Catherine Street, which is a 6-story mixed use, and that's under construction. Thus, this idea of connection between different densities on the sites. On the right-hand side, there is a 4-story townhome on the right-hand side. And certainly you can see within the surrounding area, a number of 5-story buildings in the back area at the alley. And certainly across the street at 303 Detroit Street is a 5-story commercial. And of course, the Ann Arbor Farmers Market right across the street. So that shows a number of context. It is actually inspired about this idea of having a building that addresses issue of density, but also try to find ways of breaking the mass of the building down to start to also contextually try to connect to the smaller scale buildings as well. So this idea of density of the larger scale, but also in a sense engaging and embracing the idea of greenery in the building brings that aspect to it. So you can begin to see these terraces and balconies. The idea is not only providing these outdoor spaces for the tenants, but also, for that matter, it's a way of connecting to the street and connecting to the public area. So that's also important. Now we can go to the big idea of how we were developing this. So the first image on the left shows the building envelope. It's very simple diagram, a box showing the potential building envelope with a step back for the street wall. So that presents that initial step we take. We always look at, okay, what is the building envelope and how do we carve away from this? How do we bring scale? How to bring this idea, bring light and air? So each of these steps, the second one is really addressing the issue of bringing light and air, as you can see in the diagram too. So we've carved deep into the potential massing to bring light and fresh air into the L-shaped units and to break the bulk of the massing down along the street face. The third image is talking about the street wall setback. In the third diagram, we're also pushing a portion of the facade back further to create a street walk step back. And that's awfully important as you start to bring these elements within the project and start to refine the design. On the fourth one, you can also again see the additional stepping down to street and the neighborhood buildings. And that's an interesting approach when you start to carve away and start to bring these elements into projects. For the upper floors, the modules come out towards the street. And Kenji will show you with that cursor. One from each of the 3 units across the width of the building, giving this facade a finer, more appropriate scale. That was the key to the project, is how do you find this idea of this hinge building, this mediation between larger massing and then the smaller scale that also is, in a way, wedded to the smaller scale contextual projects as well. Next one. So our sustainability diagram is critical. This is something that we provide in all our projects. The project will also place a priority on this, and we are seeking a LEED Silver rating. So that is our goal. That's our aspirations. So we designed these projects with passive design strategies, finding ways to actually accommodate not only LEED Silver, but also go beyond. And that's what we do with all of our work, is we do think the premise that architecture should always embrace a building that has sustainability and legacy to their projects. And it has to be a way of wedding that idea about the planet and how we can provide architecture and buildings in place, but also addressing these critical issues of sustainability. The floor plans naturally allow for cross ventilation for passive cooling. You can see the small diagram in the bottom right. So the nature of the units were designed in such a way that air can come in and also exit. And that's the interesting aspect of perhaps the plans, where if vertically one can't do it, or you can't have a cross grain the unit, but if you design the units that have these cutouts for the outdoor balconies and terraces, you can provide this flow of air, which is critical to the idea of passive design strategies. The facade will feature a durable, low maintenance exterior material palette. That's awfully important. So those are critical issues to it. On the rooftop, we do have solar panels, which will allow for the high efficiency, which will also allow for the high efficiency mechanical equipments, and they are intended to be invisible from the street. So these are the components of it. So the building becomes a living organism. So we're trying to really embrace that concept. We also, of course, have the idea of the bike path, bike parking, of course, and storage, and the EV as well, stations. So this shows the big idea, which we tried to bring to all of our projects. And these idea of terraces and balconies really celebrate this idea of having indoor-outdoor spaces. Next. And here's the first image. You can see how the stepping of the building inward also greatly minimizes the bulk of the building from the street. So this idea of stepping back vertically, also having a narrower profile, really starts to address those issues of how you break the massing, break the scale down. So the facade above the street level will be defined by these larger open windows with significant terracing on the upper levels to animate the building for the street life. So we do see these opportunities where there's a vertical connection that you start to engage not only the street, but the building itself as a way of connecting between people in the building and also the street. Next. And this is more of the next one. Is from the other view. So this one is also looking south from Ann Arbor's Farmers Market. The building scale back and again pulls back from the building as well. There's elements of it which we think is starting to work within the overall massing, and that's crucial to it. So with this particular one, shows how the building has been carefully designed to fit in with its neighbors. As you can see, the building on the left, there's a proportional scale to it, and you can see the fourth story on the right-hand side as well. So the massing is roughly equivalent to the sixth story to the south, while the north we've left avoided above the three-story street wall to bring the massing below adjacent to the fourth-story townhouse. So you start to see these horizontal lines within the building, that kind of manipulation of the building starts to engage both the context of a smaller four-story and also the larger five-story on the other side. And the next one is a close-up showing the life of the street, which is awfully important to zoom in and start to see opportunities and how you begin to see the relationship between people and the scale of the building and the proportions of the windows. All those play a critical role to the project. So in the close-up, you can see how we're continuing the town hall typology across our lower levels, which will have front doors facing the sidewalk. That's a very important component to the project, how to engage that experience. And that also, in a way, it's a way of engaging the smaller scale residential buildings as well. So those are critical to the project. It's clearly defined main entrance is there as well. It's recessed at the ground level and provides a publicly accessible court. Next. So the material palette that we're using So the material palette we're using is we're embracing the idea of white brick, and we're also looking at aluminum doors and windows in terms of exterior. Each of these recessed windows has this idea of the Juliet balconies, so there's a kind of depth to it and density in certain of the windows, but that provides this opportunity to bring green space up to throughout the building, not only the terraces, but the balconies, but frankly, the windows as well. Bring that density to it, which is really excellent. So this is the white brick component. Equally so, we have the textured sage green brick. So certain elevations will have the green brick, and then the other ones will have the white brick. All those start to play a critical role to the building. And also we do have, of course, the metal mesh guardrails on it as well. So that shows you a kind of detail of the material palette among the other things. The next one is just a street elevation. We do have the other ones available as well, but this shows the key components of it. And here's an elevation showing the building. It starts to show the levels. We're at 77 feet for the building. We begin to see the breaking down the massing. Even in the elevation, the idea of showing the depth of the facade was critical to it. So very important. You can start to see the terraces and large windows, among others, which you could also see in the rendering as well. Now, the floor plans, I'm just going to talk briefly about that. We do have below grade parking. So we have one subterranean parking level and on grade parking a little bit off the alley. And that does provide the 36 on-site parking spaces. All the parking will be concealed from the street. We've also shown 24 spaces, as I mentioned, for bikes. The trash, recycling, and compost will provided here as well and picked up via the alley. So you begin to see that how in this particular one on the main level, you see the parking. Yeah, go to the next image. So jump to the next one, Kenji. That shows the ramp going below. In this one, you see what we've done in terms of the townhouses, it's fronting it on 4th. So it starts to screen the small parking components we have in the back area. And that's a very important aspect of the project. So we provided the parking, but also being sensitive to the street and having this idea of an engagement activation for these townhomes that walk out to the street on 4th Avenue. So that's the key thing to that project as well. Within the above levels, and I'll have Kenji will go through each one of these as I'm talking. So there's a number of them. So the above levels are organized around a central spine with light wells in either end, while the exterior steps in and out to extend the perimeter of each unit and allows for greater access to views, light, and air, and also the opportunity to engage the street. That's all critical to us. So these were all provided in this overall part T that we're showing for floor plan. So each of the levels are following the same idea. The third level in particular, above the concrete podium, has expansive outdoor terraces. And terraces continue to step in as we move up through the building, creating these private outdoor spaces open to sky. And we end on the roof, and there will be some private roof decks up there, so very important for those top units to be able to have this experience. So we will be feature a solar array as well. Those are the key plans, and then the roof deck, and there you can see the roof deck. So we are providing these roof decks on the deck as well. We do this with our work. We start to think of these buildings, building in place, grounded in terms of where it is. We look at material concepts of it, which we did in terms of embracing brick, looking at also refinement of that material and playfulness in terms of not only the green component, the sage color brick with the white brick. These are elements that I think bring or elevate the architecture. And so the last one.
Sorry to interrupt. Is this your last slide?
And you can see the cross section throughout the building.
Sorry to interrupt. Is this your last slide?
Yes, it is indeed. Timed it it should be about 10 minutes long. There you go, have the overall section that shows the building, shows the terraces, the private roof decks, also shows the residential units vertically. And you can also see in the section where you have the roof decks on the top, all within that 78-foot max allowable. So that's our presentation. Thank you very much. Looking forward to your discussion, your comments and discussion.
All right, thank you for that. So if you, well, at this point, do we have staff comments then from Mariana available?
Sure. Yes, I will try to make this quick. And also the staff report is based on an earlier version of the presentation. So I will try not to make any comments that no longer apply. I would quickly like to read some of the background on Braun Court. The 7 buildings from 313 to 327 Braun Court were built from 1914 to 1918 as single-family homes. The houses are nearly identical with gable fronted roofs and gabled wall dormers and covered front porches. All are stucco clad. The street of Brown Court was closed to vehicles by 1974, and then the buildings were remodeled in the 1980s. From the mid-1990s to 2020, Brown Court was the center of the LGBTQ community in Ann Arbor. As was mentioned, this is located in the D2 zone and in the Carytown Character District, and the design does comply with the D2 regulations and Carytown standards, except for staff has been in contact with the applicants about some changes to the average offset at the top of the street wall, but that is something that will be dealt with a little bit later. In terms of the downtown design guidelines, some of the ones that staff found particularly pertinent relate to urban pattern and form, open space, parking, driveways, and service areas, building massing, street edge, entries, materials, building operating systems, and sustainability. So very quickly for the staff analysis, as noted, this is a transition space between downtown and more residential areas of Ann Arbor. It is taller than a lot of the Carytown buildings, which are 2 to 4 stories. But as you can see on the drawings with the proposed new development, particularly along Catherine Street and 4th Avenue, it may not be out of the height context anymore, just given the new construction that's going on. The design does follow the downtown design guidelines for buildings that are larger than the surrounding structures, with the facade being broken up into smaller building modules with the varying heights and step backs. The project does include open space, but it is primarily private and semi-private plazas and balconies, and so staff just wants to encourage the design team to consider, as they continue developing this, that there will be the future residents of the building, but also pedestrians, given that this is located just across the street from the farmers market and the Carytown shops, and Brown Court has historically been a publicly accessible gathering space. Staff also finds that the brick is in context with the material of the area, and this project, as noted, is seeking the exceptions to height limits for sustainability. And again, that's something that will be discussed a little bit later down the line, but that the applicant touched upon is that they are seeking LEED Silver rating, and there will be some sustainability aspects to the project. So that is just my quick outline, and I will turn it over to the board for questions and discussion.
Thank you, Mariana. Board members, Lori.
Hi, thanks. Lots of really fun things going on here. I think Ann Arbor is a community that likes some playfulness in the design of elements in the community, and rarely do we get that in a way that is either not just like the random use of color, but to have the form itself and a fresh take on materials provide that, I think, is really appropriate to a site that's brought so much joy to individuals. I know this may not be everyone's cup of tea from an architectural standpoint, because it is a very different approach. But I personally think that it brings a flavor of kind of distinction, not quite like anywhere else, to this important site. I love the use of the townhome frontage on the street to create some street activation going in and out of the doors versus having all of that circulation through the rear, through the central core in the building, which you certainly could have done. But I think that brings a nice scale and rhythm across the facade. A couple of points architecturally I've been trying to quite put my finger on is with the push and pull of the kind of modules. The 3rd floor condition where there's only kind of a single story in the module, yeah, that kind of those two kind of units right there, proportionately just feels like it doesn't quite jive with the rest of the way you're pushing and pulling the modules. Like it needs to be 2 or 3 or 4 stories to have the same flavor. Something continually draws my eye to that those 2 bars that are only a single story high, and I just kind of wonder if that might be something to look at, or if that was intentional to stand out, but it does feel very different from all of the other masses that you played with. I think similarly, the upper portion of 4-story units that are nearly symmetrical L-shaped kind of forms inside outside, the symmetry of that actually feels a little bit disconcerting with the other pieces pushed. It almost wants there to be a more uniform approach, that these kind of familiar geometries in our minds kind of almost create a hierarchy that may or may not have been intentional visually. I'm not sure if that makes sense to you, but for me, I just keep going to those two things as kind of not feeling like the Rubik's Cube of elements pushing in and out. And then I know I'm loading this up with lots of stuff, but the one last thing that I'll say is that I would love to see in more detail. I think that you've thought about it, but I'm not quite sure if I'm reading it yet. What happens to the facades that are sliding against each other and the floors that are being exposed, how those are getting treated. It seems like you're kind of taking this nice clean white facade, and then what happens on those other sides is sort of like the abraded from that movement of pushing and pulling. So I'm really curious about what those seams look like, and how what your thinking is on how those seams between those kind of sliding forms are being treated and finished. Because I think that'll be an important part of how we read and understand it in real space. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you for your comments. Yeah, I do think the nature of being able to bring color and the vibrancy, and we'll refine the sage color, but the idea of returns, it's a way of dealing with color where it's more in a sense of clarity of an idea, that on one orientation it's white, and you turn the corner. So that detail, how we transition from white to brick, is something we've done in the past, and we're looking forward to continue to develop that. With regards to the actual component of the singular floor, in a way, if one looks at the push-pull ideas, the big idea, in a sense, one choreographs this, or like music, where there might be certain other notes, so they are a way of playfully allow that to happen. So there is a proportional aspect to this project that is what led to that idea, that singular pane that came over, and then the volume above it, which is all recessed back. So, but we absolutely will take your comments and review them, and absolutely we'll have a look at that, some of the comments you made.
Thank you, Lori. Anybody else? Dick?
Thanks, Jeff. So you've obviously seen all of our earth tones in Ann Arbor, and the dark browns and the reds, and in an area where the sun may not shine for a month in the winter, then this is a real fun relief. But did your thinking go beyond that, beyond just creating something that stands out and is unique color-wise to Ann Arbor? Is there more to it than that?
I think the idea of the sage was this opportunity to have a number of balconies and terraces that bring green space vertically. That it was a way of marrying the building, the color, the material of the building with green and sustainable strategies. Because of course, the cleanse of air, among others, as by bringing the landscape vertically, the building, in a sense, in a way, weds that idea. So that's what led to it. It was something very much connected to the two. So we looked at a variety of different colors and others. But I do think when one works with color, it has to be singular, a clarity in it. So the idea of having the white and the green in terms of the different orientations made sense to us. That's what drove the project. Okay. But it was about landscaping and then the color of the building.
Thanks. Staying on this facade, you talked about the Juliet balconies up above. And there are other similarly sized window openings above and below that one where the cursor is, that appear to be floor to ceiling sliding windows. Am I right about that?
They'll be tempered, obviously, to a certain height, and then they're not sliders. They'll be operatives.
They're not sliders. Okay,
but they won't be sliders.
Well, yeah, I sure the guidelines talk about shadow lines and depth, and it would sure be great. The more Juliet balconies, the better. on the larger window plates. If you could do more of that, I think it would really enhance the project. The guidelines also talk about the main entry being identified, and that main entry right in the middle, right where you're pointing, is 22 or so feet tall and maybe a little bit less deep. So I think you lose the human scale and the transitional space going from light to dark because it's so tall. So if there would be a way to incorporate maybe a slotted that sunlight would get through, projecting canopy there that would also reduce the ceiling height for people entering the lobby, you might be able to create more human scale there. And we do talk about that in the guidelines, that the main entry should be obvious and clear and use canopies where possible. Let's see. Oh, and the street wall kind of gets lost in the northern half. I see it on the southern half, but north of the main entry, you sort of lose that street wall. And it doesn't bother me. I just want to point it out that we've got it in the guidelines. In this context, with the 4-story building next door, it may work just fine. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Wendy?
Yeah, I think both Lori and staff pointed out that this site has been used by the public, but now with the townhouse entries, I imagine that those folks will not be so wild about people walking across so close to their entries. So in situations like that, often there's a step or a stoop or something to provide some differentiation between the private space and the public space, or little courtyard areas. Is there something that you've considered for that, so that these don't become just kind of an extension of the sidewalk for people to walk on?
Yes, we do have that in mind, and we've been developing that. So we do want to provide that sense of separation, but also openness. So we will certainly continue looking at that.
Okay. I had a couple of comments. First of all, I like this building. It has a very, I don't know, European, Scandinavian feel to it. I really like the punched openings and, the sort of the square geometry of them. And then, of course, the mixture of Juliet balconies that are recessed and the ones that are just windows. From a construction standpoint, you've kind of designed a real leaker here. So I hope that when it comes time to detailing and specifications, real attention is paid to the transitions between these vertical walls and the horizontal conditions, decks and balconies, well, not balconies, but deck areas particularly. I mean, we've had some examples in Ann Arbor of buildings that have gotten built and they're plagued with leaks in those kinds of situations. The right kind of detailing and the specification of materials can take care of that. It's just something to note when you get to that stage, and then watching the contractor, making sure they execute accordingly. One of the things that's a question in my mind having to do with the masonry is when we look at the example you showed us of the brick detail. And I understand that, perspective renderings are somewhat conceptual, but when I look at the masonry in the renderings, it almost looks like And it's not brick, it's some kind of textured block or something like that, which I certainly wouldn't want to see. So if you can talk a little bit about that. Are these modular bricks? Are they jumbos? Are they real clay masonry, or are they cement bricks? If you can
Our intent is to have brick. Yeah. Yeah.
Are they precast panels, Larkin, or built in place?
Right now, it's built in place, quite obviously, as the project evolves. And Brian, you could jump in as well. We've been researching this. You can jump in, Brian, as well.
Yeah.
We're looking at a number of different iterations.
But I mean, to Jeff, to get back to your original question, I think that's just a graphic reading issue. We intend to use standard size brick. I mean, which is a modular size, but it's not a larger size. It'll match the texture that you see in the area.
Okay. And then I had a quick question for staff. I must have missed a meeting because I don't recall, and I hadn't been down in this neighborhood in a while, but you've talked about a building under construction at the corner. And did that project come in front of us, Hank? Or do other board members remember seeing that?
Remember that was the Housing Commission project, and we did see it.
Catherine project is that the one you're referring to, 121 Catherine?
That doesn't look like what we saw though for that project, if I remember correctly. We did see it, but that doesn't look like what we saw. What we saw
It
actually
might have been
more compatible with this actually than that even.
maybe some artistic license in these renderings. I can point you to where the stream our permitting and application portal is for the Catherine project, if you'd like to see their materials and site plan to refresh your memory.
Yeah, if you would send me that after the meeting, Hank. I'm just curious about it because I must have missed that meeting, and that's on me.
I do actually have it in front of me, if you would like. All of the materials should be linked under MIX-PROJ24-0014. And I can follow up by email with that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, I like the mixture of the white masonry with the sage. I think that's brilliant. So overall, I like the building. I'm concerned about details of construction. So just watch those, and otherwise, that's the extent of me. John, you have your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Jeff. As I've mentioned to other petitioners, I represent the Public Art Commission. The City Council wants to really see public art in projects, and they've changed the makeup of the board to include a member of the Art Commission. So I'd be remiss if I did not ask specifically. Staff has identified two places where public art could go, and that was the open spaces and the street edge. Can you tell me whether you have any plans for public art, where it might go, and what kind, and how you plan to sort of develop it?
John, that's a really good question, and I would like to defer it to a representative from the development team if they are on. Jeff, are you on the call and able to join to speak to John's question?
Jeff is here, so we will promote. Brittany, if you could do that, please.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Jeff.
The answer is yes, we certainly have intent to that. We have not yet figured out exactly how to do it. We have actually several sort of community-based initiatives we're looking at to celebrate in some way the history of Broncourt and the neighborhood. And we are going to work that element in. I can't, from a design aspect right now, tell you how, but it's definitely something we're going to be working on in plan to include in the project. It's I've been working and living in the Carytown neighborhood for most of my life, so we're well attuned. And we have done a lot of projects with the Art Association over the past 5-6 years in the mural space and some other projects. So it's definitely something well on the radar.
Excellent. And the Art Commission stands ready and willing to help in any way that we can. We have extensive networks into that creative community. So thank you. That I also want to ask about solar. I see the solar panels are on the building, and what about natural gas? Can you say that you are limiting natural gas for residents?
We would certainly say, yeah, we're going to minimize it as much as possible. Whether or not we can eliminate it completely, I think is like unknown at this time. I mean, Jeff, I don't know if you wanted to add any color on that one yourself.
I reiterate the same thing. The intent is to build as fully an electric building as possible. There's always subject to capacity of the electric companies, the utility companies, and we haven't got into the MEPs yet. We're engaging that shortly, but we are going to be moving as close as we can to that end.
Excellent. Well, you'll get this question at council, I can assure you. That I have to take the unusual step of separating myself a bit from my board members. That I'm not so sure that the white brick and the sage fit into the area. I guess I could consider it a giant Louise Nevelson sculpture, but I think you're going to get more than my pushback, particularly from the historic foundation. Jeff Crockett was on earlier complaining about the rendering, and that I think when he sees this, I'm not so sure that he's going to be as excited as my colleagues on the board. I'm glad to hear that my colleagues do like this. They have more experience. I'm just offering my feedback visually. I must say I love the massing, and so I love the variety in there. I think you've done that in my viewpoint elegantly. It's unique. It's creative. So I like that. I like the idea that you're considering sort of adding sort of some kind of historic storytelling on some of your walls, which could be a kind of public art as well. So with that, I don't like the color, but I'm just one of several on the board. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Lori?
Yeah, I just want to note one thing, particular color versus particular color. I do find that it's interesting that part of what has made Ann Arbor interesting, the word eclectic has been used over the years, the expressive. What that over the years hasn't meant is copying the things all around you and continuing to do them all in the same way. It actually is about bringing something fresh and thought-provoking to the urban landscape. And so I just would like to kind of express that traditional Ann Arborism isn't traditional architecture. And in that sense, and that will mean tension points between what one likes and what someone else likes. And I think in this particular location, in this particular community, that's especially challenging to kind of make everybody happy in that regard. But I think that the history of it is that it didn't always make everybody happy. It really was about the element of surprise and joy that comes from the creative expression. So I would like that to be on the record a little bit, that I think it's important that we are willing to push our own boundaries of what's expected, what's traditional, what's contextual, and what that actually means from appropriateness standpoint, and not to be too bottled up about it, because these are the moments that, well, they can certainly go awry, but those opportunities are also the moments that things really get special. And we just need to kind of be prepared for a little bit of the tension that comes from when that happens. I think sometimes we have things that are presented to us that are just not very well thought through or done without a lot of passion and care. And I would just say, I think this team has clearly developed this with a lot of care in how it can be executed, and it's evident in it. Stylistically, it's probably not very universal to everybody's tastes, and that kind of comes with the territory. Thank you.
From my perspective,
appreciate you saying that.
Very well said, Lori. Those are all points worth considering, and I know there's a lot of fondness for Brown Court, but I don't personally think those houses were particularly significant in the first place. They were made out of a stucco material that doesn't fit other parts of Ann Arbor. And so I think the idea that different things can happen and there can be that sort of accommodation is good. So I think you expressed it quite well. Anybody else? All right, well, Mariana, if you are so inclined, if you've been able to jot down and summarize what we've had to say.
I will start with some of the likes. Overall, the board likes the colors and the tones of the materials, though not all members agree. Generally, the board likes the massing and the variety of the building, the punched openings, the Juliet balconies, and the square geometry. The board also likes the entrances off of the street rather than at the building core, but maybe a consideration will be a stoop or some kind of differentiation between the public and the private space. Other things to consider are that some elements of the facade feel different to the overall push and pull of the modules, specifically the one-story portion at the center third floor and some of the symmetry of the upper levels. Also, the main entrance should be identified, maybe thinking about ways to get light in because that entrance is so tall to accommodate the human scale. Maybe the street wall gets lost on the north side of the building. There should be some consideration of the transition between vertical and horizontal elements to avoid leaking. And adding a public art element to the project would be appreciated, maybe something that has an element of historic storytelling. Also, though out of the direct purview of the board, encouraging moving towards minimal or no natural gas. And then finally, for the record, that with this project, there may be tensions between what some people like and others don't, due to the eclecticism of the city and that kind of push and pull. Is that generally accurate, or are there things that should be added or taken away?
I had one, and it was during the discussion of the entry. My thinking was an element that filters the light and actually reduces the scale as a transition when entering. So my thinking was not to bring more light in. It was start to filter the light as you go from the street to the building. So it's immediate.
Thank you.
Lori, you have your hand up. I didn't mean for you to take it down. I'm just wondering if you have something to say.
No, I think it was just left up from the last time. Thank you.
All right, is that all for the staff summary?
It sounds good to me. If anybody else has anything that they think needs to get included, say so.
Thank you.
If not, thank you to the development team for that presentation.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
Good night.
Going on to unfinished business. Nothing on our agenda. I just would quickly like to mention that the memo that we discussed at our last meeting is going on to council. There were some questions about it and Hank clarified that. So it is on there. It is in their packets.
For July 15th.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I guess we can't force them to read it, but I hope they do. So thanks for taking care of that, Hank, and for letting us know.
Jeff, I did get a question from someone who asked me whether we could get a copy or that they could get a copy of that previous self-evaluation. And I could not find it on the Legistar site, so I don't know if that's something that any of you have or know where it can be found.
Are you talking about the memo that Dick drafted?
The memo that we sent to council references an earlier self-evaluation that was done a few years ago.
Oh.
And I don't know, I could not find that. I could find something where the planning manager had put forward a proposal to hire a consultant to do it. But I could not find anything after that.
Yeah, it was Tamara who found that, and she sent it to me and I forwarded it on. So I think I have it, Wendy, and I'll send it to you.
Okay.
If I do.
Yeah.
Great. Dick, you are our excellent archivist.
Well, we'll see.
Communications, there were several in the packet. I hope everybody had an opportunity to read those. Some of them pertain to the South University project, and one of them or a couple of them pertain to this one. So those are duly noted. And now we are at the second public comment section. Brittany? Do we have anybody?
Nope, sorry. So far we have no hands raised at this time.
Oh, you're muted, Jeff.
Sorry. Thank you, everybody, for your participation today. I hope everybody's having an excellent summer. We just got the tail end of barreling through our location. On a side note, my wife has every year for the past 5 years gone down to a villa on Carriacou, which got wiped out. There's like very little left of that tiny little island, and we just got the tail end of it. So I hope that's the end of it for us. So again, thank you all. I hope you're having a good summer, and entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Moved by Lori and seconded by Wendy. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you guys.
Recording stopped.
Thank you, everyone.